software testing career. Do you need to improve your software quality, security, and cost effectiveness? This webinar offers a sneak peek of the ASTQB conference and will preview the keynote topics, tutorials, and breakout sessions that are designed to keep you out of trouble. The ASTQB conference is a one-of-a-kind meeting that is designed to give you practical, ready-to-use software quality assurance and security strategies that will help you eliminate unnecessary costs. This webinar features two of ASTQB's most popular presenters, Taz Daughtry and Randy Rice. They will offer great software testing tips and help you to decide if the ASTQB conference is for you. With that, I would like to turn it over. Randy, take it away.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dave. And we're going to get right into it. I would like to just kind of say here at the outset that what we want to cover in this session are some ways that you can be proactive in mitigating some of the cybersecurity and software reliability risk that are so common. It seems like we read things every day about various kinds of failures and security breaches and such. And, you know, our intent here is not to scare you to death, but to, as the title of the presentation says, is to learn ways to protect your company and your own career. And the only way to know that is really to know what the risks are and what the dangers are out there. So we don't want to introduce undue fear into the conversation, but we also want to be realistic in what's going on out there, and that we need to be paying attention to a lot of things that a lot of companies, unfortunately, right now don't seem to be. Now, we're also going to give you this sneak peek preview of the ASTQB conference that will be in September in Washington, D.C. And along with that, we're also going to be sprinkling in along the way some practical tips and techniques that you can use and take away from this session that will do these very objectives to protect your company and your career. And I'm also going to throw in, toward the end, a few of the newer free and cheap tools that I found because that kind of dovetails in with one of the topics that we're going to have as a tutorial in the conference. So, who are we and why are we here? Well, I'll let Taz go first with his introduction, and then I will do mine, okay?
Thank you, Randy. I'm Taz Daughtry. Randy and I are both directors on the American Software Testing Qualification Board. My most recent extensive work has been teaching in the computer science faculty at James Madison University here in Virginia. Also, my major professional affiliations with the American Society for Quality, of which I am a fellow, have extensive background in industry, both in nuclear power, in medical devices, and most recently in the defense contracting arena. So we'll try to bring some real-world experience and also give you some sort of a flavor of the kinds of resources that we are helping to both contribute to and trying to use in terms of what it means to be a software testing professional. Thank you, Randy.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Taz. And of course, my name is Randy Rice. I'm a certified tester advanced level. I have all three of those, so they say that I'm full. I often say I'm full, but usually after a big dinner. But anyway, I've been in the business of building and testing large-scale mission-critical systems now for over 35 years, specializing in testing alone, and that is a specialty area, for about 27 years now. And like Taz, I have a fair amount of DoD experience and some medical device experience as well in that space, but also one of the profiles of my clients are financial companies and organizations that are dealing with huge amounts of money every day. And actually all of these organizations, as well as probably the one that you work in, share the same concern, that we get it right, that our customers trust us. And so that's kind of the place of experience that Taz and I both come from. other interesting thing you might want to know is that Taz and I are leaders of the ISTQB sub-working group for the expert level security testing syllabus. I'm the chair, Taz is the co-chair, and you may not be aware that this effort is going on, but we have been working for some time now actually to define an expert level security tester certification, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as this presentation unfolds, and we're real excited about it because we think it's going to bring a new value to the testing community worldwide, one that's really needed at this point.
Yeah, notice also that we are both active with not only the American board, the ASTQB, but the I in ISTQB stands for international, and in fact the working group that Randy just described is international, and the effort that we are going to be working towards is a certification that will go worldwide. And of course, we're so interconnected as a world now, and that means that what shows up as a security vulnerability or a breach can happen literally around the world. It's just been the headlines in the last day or so that we have another massive breach that's influencing not only the ability of folks to feel comfortable about their identities, but also is creating some tension between a couple of the very large countries, very large, powerful countries in this world that are sort of pointing fingers in terms of who's at fault here. But that's always going to be in the headlines. We're seeing not only the failures that are happening, but the new threats, the new vulnerabilities are being exposed daily, almost hourly. And one of the things that we're dealing with here is that unlike what we've been in the past with software quality issues, reliability issues, where it's enough to be fighting a battle just to keep the systems from failing on their own, that now there are people in groups, nation states and hacktivists and
I'm going to fill in for where Taz just dropped out there, that the source of these attacks can really be coming from any place. In fact, even from internal to the organization. And that's brought to the forefront the idea of how much security awareness do we need in our company? Is it a matter of training? Is it a matter of processes? What is really the key here? And generally what we're seeing also in the organizations that we work with and that we poll is basically a lack of security awareness in organizations. One of the things that happened here recently in Oklahoma City was, you would think that dumpster diving was a thing of the past, where you'd find personal information just dumped out into the open, but a local bank here in Oklahoma City, someone went out to their business dumpster and they were taking the trash out, and they noticed this big clear plastic, like 30-gallon trash bag full of like deposit slips and things for businesses. None of it had been shredded, all kinds of reports in there, and how does that happen? So that's you can't really blame it on the custodians because those documents should have been shredded. So things like that, no matter how good your technology might be for security, the human factor can bring it all down. And to wrap around all of this, we have all kinds of new things coming around. Now the idea of the Internet everywhere and the Internet of Things, Internet appliances, just bring new opportunities for people to gain access to your network, and also new ways for software to fail.
Yeah, I didn't realize they had business dumpsters. Is that also to balance out having recreational dumpsters too, Randy?
That's right. We we don't just have one type of dumpster here in Oklahoma City. We have industrial strength ones as well.
You keep losing them in the hurricanes. Well, talking about storms, the kinds of storms that we have in the internet and we have in software, failures are literally interconnected. As one example we have here, essentially you have a lot of single points of failure possible for interconnected systems. This was more of a reliability issue. I don't think it was a security breach per se, but just most recent situation where you have some difficulty at one location, an air traffic control system, and the center goes down for one reason or another. I know it was one in the Chicago area last year where someone deliberately set a fire there. And so it was physical damage. In this case, it was software a problem that happened, but essentially it cascades throughout the whole system. Literally, it can cascade around the world. And so one of the other issues we have now, as we have much more visible interconnected systems, so these failures in reliability and security are going to be exposed much more easily and are going to be in the news. And so when we say we want to keep you out of trouble, we want to protect you and your company, we want to protect you from being in the headlines, because that's not the kind of, like the pictures we're going to be showing on the next several slides, we don't want your situations to wind up as case studies in the next webinar we do. Can you push it, Randy?
Oh, and in the mailing that we sent out to promote this webinar and the conference, and one that I sent out to my own clients, I made the comment that I often make to my own personal clients, that there's two places you don't want to be at the end of the project. One is in the newspapers, and the other is in the courtroom. And so typically it's the culmination of things that go wrong. And the thing that this disruption that happened over Britain, and we've had them happen here, as Taz said, in the U.S., the LA Center also went down, the Air Traffic Control Center went down because of a bad hub, it's not just software that can fail, it's the entire infrastructure. Just one component of it, I think the LA failure a couple of years ago or so was due to a bad hub. And we're not saying you can totally prevent that, but there are contingency plans, and just to be aware of how these things can happen. And who would have thought that someone setting a fire in a more remote building would affect all the air traffic going through Chicago, but it really did. So even those kind of physical security threats are among us. Now, when we were putting this presentation together, Taz had all of his good stories in here, so I want to put in a couple of mine too. This was a story that came out fairly recently, about 3 weeks ago actually, where there was a cybersecurity researcher, Chris Roberts. He was on board a United flight from Denver to Chicago, and he tweeted that he was kind of playing around with the in-flight entertainment system on the airplane. And at first it seemed like it was, fairly innocent of what he was doing there. But when he landed at his final destination, he was greeted by some very serious-looking people because, as it turned out, that he had admitted later that he had tampered with the in-flight entertainment systems on about 15 to 20 flights. Now, the real scary part about this one was, though, that he was able to manipulate some of the airline's thrust management computer systems while he was on that flight, and even was able to issue the climb command, which caused one of the engines to climb, which caused the plane to kind of go in a lateral pattern. And of course, if I'm going to try to hack something, I'm not going to try to hack something that's 30,000 feet in the sky that I'm riding in at the time. But also, the thing to take away from this is that trying to do a security test or find vulnerabilities, you have to be very careful about that, because unless you have permissions and authorizations and all that, there's no way to know you from a malicious attacker or malicious insider if you're doing this in your company. And one of the things that actually came out of all of this was that his own company really suffered from it, unfortunately, because one of his big investors pulled out and they had to lay off about half of their workforce just because of that one incident. So don't do this, okay? I don't think any of us would. Another thing that really piqued my interest was a little story about an iPad failure. This happened on American Airlines, and I'm sure you've seen the pilots walking through the airports with their super huge cases that are filled with manuals of airport layouts, landing patterns, runway patterns, all that, equipment specifications, instructions, all that. Well, someone had the great idea, hey, why don't we just put this on an iPad? And then the pilots don't have to wag around these big cases. Great idea. Unfortunately, the iPad, when some of the pilots started to use it, this was on April 28th, is the date on this slide, the iPad crashed. And therefore, the pilots couldn't get the information they needed to let the planes take off or take off in the planes. And American said that there were no flights canceled due to it, but there were certainly some flight delays due to that. And, you know, who'd have thought that an app crashing on an iPad would keep an airplane on the ground? So once again, we have the new challenge of a new technology affecting things.
And to keep the transportation theme going, obviously we've all heard about the driverless cars. Right now they're in an awkward situation because they're trying to be careful about public perception, and so even if it's the car is being rear-ended, supposedly all the Google reports indicate that their car was not at fault. But despite the fact that humans are much more fallible than we can probably make the computers for driving cars, there's going to be a huge sensitivity and obviously an overreaction anytime it looks like there's a software or a computer system problem in driving the automobile. So it's going to be extraordinary liability issues. But on the other hand, it might be very good because in all these cases, I go all the way back to the nuclear industry where we have catastrophic consequences of failures, obviously airliners and now fleets of automobiles, medical devices, another case. All of those are areas where we can't just be experimental and let anybody do anything they want to with software. So in one sense, it puts the assurance activities, it puts the appraisal and specifically the testing activities in the midst of that process. And so there's going to be a challenge, but also a demand, I think, as we move into more computerized aspects visible in our society and the risk very obvious and probably subjected to regulatory constraints of various sorts, legal issues, liability is going to come up, that there's going to be a need for well thought out and well performed testing. And that certainly is one instance there that I can certainly see is coming on the horizon. The other one that obviously people are much more concerned about is their own personal finances. We had the situation most recently, of tax returns that people are discovering their refunds are being claimed incorrectly and diverted to other folks that have stolen information. I mentioned just a little while ago that we very recently have a problem with a lot of present and former government employees whose data has been accessed and going to be used for who knows what purposes. And at the very least, you wind up with a loss of reputation, a loss of confidence, whether it's a retailer or an agency of the government that's supposedly keeping sound practices in terms of protecting your systems and your systems being, the information in your systems being well documented and well protected. It's really a situation, again, where a thorough analysis, and sometimes not even before you do the testing, the test planning will ask the questions about where the vulnerabilities are, what the contingencies are, the sorts of things that a red team type analysis might be called to do, helps us understand and be better prepared so we don't wind up with these failures occurring in unexpected ways and places. And so I think that's another, both a challenge and an opportunity, and it's certainly from a financial point of view, just the expense of this and some of the other retail, I think we have retail data coming later on in the presentation, just the expense of having to reissue credit cards or issue people protection in terms of their identity theft insurance is extremely visible and quantifiable, and so that again may help make the case to say we need to make the investment now. It's a pay me now or pay me later situation about investing in the testing.
That's absolutely right, and you know this particular case points out that you can manipulate a lot of things that seem you know, innocent on the surface, like you know the way this particular breach happened was that you know you can request a online tax transcript, and so the assumption is that only the requester would know that information needed to get it. But actually, if you work in a doctor's office, you have all the information you need from the forms that are contained in your medical files at the doctor now because of the tie-in between the IRS and the healthcare system. So now the question is being raised, do we need to, or do doctors' offices rather, need to ban cell phone cameras behind the counter? Or even that wouldn't totally stop it. You could make a photocopy or whatever. So anyway, what happens is we have little bits of personal information in the open, and they can be combined in a greater way to accomplish some of these. And that's where the security tester can really add value, is to look for those vulnerabilities. Now, of course, I couldn't help but include the big event of healthcare.gov. This is a little bit different because this was not just a single point of failure. This was really a project failure when you look at it. And it eventually did get turned around to where the website was up, but it was a very painful launch on this particular website, and it was more than just a website. Okay, it was very highly integrated with insurance companies and providers and all kinds of other entities. And one of the other dominoes, though, that we're seeing falling, you may have heard that several of the state exchanges have had to shut down. Some of it's due to funding, some of it's due to integration problems. But the interesting thing, and the reason I put the slide in here, is because of the cost it's taking or requiring to actually close down one of the exchanges, the one in Hawaii. They asked for $5.4 million. They only got $2 million. So I don't know what that means in their ability to actually shut this down, but we may be seeing more of this in the future as well. This is not so much security impact as it is just the thing about the unexpected cost of projects, and we deal with that in testing all the time as well. So the idea here is that the more predictable our projects can be and the better performed, then the less of these kind of things that we should be experiencing.
And of course, the projects themselves, getting to deployment, getting them to operational stage is often problematic. We don't put enough time and budget in and allow for the iterations and the testing. But of course, now you have the day-to-day operations. As I said, with security concerns particularly, it's not so much the system is going to just encounter something randomly or have some user put in an ill-formed request or some other way exposing some weakness in the system. It's that the vulnerabilities are being actively searched for. In fact, some cases, vulnerabilities are being built into the system by some of the bad actors. And so one of the things that's going to happen is there'll be a continuing battle, a continuing cycle of trying to exploit the system, which means that we'll have to be in a continuous learning mode. We need to be flexible about the kinds of skills that we have. We solved yesterday's problems. I always say the military prepares to fight last war. We got to anticipate what the next war is going to be or how it's going to be ongoing. And so that's one of the reasons we want to talk about the ways that we need to have continuing education. We need to have you as an individual, you as an organization and your company, and you as a part of a professional organization continue to equip yourself and continue to take advantage of situations such as the kind of training or the kind of information that can be provided, whether it's a webinar like this, the conference that we're going to be plugging in just a moment, or any other opportunities you have, because you've got to stay up to speed with what's happening. It's the old spy versus spy.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, I've heard people say that security testing and the whole security challenge is like Y2K without a deadline. You know, it just the risk is there, but it just keeps on going. And so as we're designing the conference, one of the things that we constantly do within ASTQB, and to some extent I think also ISTQB, but we poll our audience, we poll you guys to see really what are your big concerns and what is it that's causing you fits in testing. And there were several big themes that came through, things like, you know, learning how to test mobile apps well, how to deal with cloud computing and the security issues there, the quality issues there, cybersecurity in general, test automation, how to make it work, how to make it effective. And even though we've been dealing with that topic of test automation for well over 30 years now, people are still very challenged by it because it's not automatic. Okay, automation is not automatic. It takes a lot of work, and so there's always new things to be learning and trying. And some people are just extremely challenged by making that a success in their organizations. And then you layer onto that new development methods like Agile that causes major differences in the ways that we build and deliver software. And then kind of over all of this and through all of this, you have test management and leadership needs that really support the tester. And how do you deal with these challenges? We need the resources, we need the training, we need the tools to be able to do our jobs well. And so as we were designing the conference, we wanted to have these themes in the conference. So Taz did an amazing amount of work on this conference. So Taz, why don't you give us kind of a sketch of what this is going to be about?
Sure. We are putting together a focused, fairly intimate, we think, event. One of the things that we chose as a site is in Washington, D.C., so that we can be very close to some of the key government and government contractor types that we have easy access to. ASTQB put on its first conference last spring in San Francisco, and so we're coming over to the other coast now, having a day of tutorials beginning on September 14th, and then on the Tuesday and Wednesday, the 15th and 16th, putting together a couple of parallel tracks, breakout sessions, along with we think a real headline collection of keynote speakers. This is our shameless self-promotion here. You have till the end of this month to get a discount on the registration, the proverbial early bird discount. And then for registering or trying to participate in this webinar, we have an additional code right there that you can additional discount off of. So as you're viewing this information, there is the registration information. We'll highlight verbally in the next several slides some aspects, but you can certainly go to the website and explore the details of the full range of content that we have at the conference.
Okay, and thanks, Taz. And so really, I took this from the brochure, but it really encapsulates, I think, the ways that this can help, this conference can help protect your company and your career, which is, once again, what we're talking about in this webinar. Because, as we said, we do a fair amount of polling and talking to the folks that come through the various certification courses and are in our community of testers. And so we feel like the topics that we have on the program are very focused on you and your real-world challenges. We've listened to what you're telling us, and we went out and got the best people in the industry on these topics to share their experiences and their data with you. And I'm pretty confident in saying you're not going to find this lineup probably in any other conference. It's a very unique keynote lineup and even breakout session and tutorial lineup as well. But it's really designed to be very proactive and preventative in nature, to keep you out of trouble by doing the right things on projects. And a lot of times we tend to look at the end result of the like the failures that Taz and I were highlighting earlier, but it's not until you go back to the root causes and you find the defects earlier and prevent them that you're really making some headway in this. So by doing that, that's how you keep out of trouble. It's almost like insurance. You do the things that you need to do, whether they be inspections or certain types of tests or whatever, and that's the big payoff. And the payoff there is to save your company money because, as we're going to see in some upcoming slides here, once these problems go out into the wild, they go out to your users and all that, the cost of both fixing the defects excuse me, and cleaning up after the defects can be incredibly expensive, hundreds of thousands of dollars per incident. In fact, some have exceeded millions of dollars per incident.
Well, we're, as I said, very excited about the lineup of speakers we have. We're kicking off on the conference the Tuesday, Wednesday, the body of the conference after the tutorial day with Gary McCraw. If you don't know him, you should know him. He literally has written the book or several of the books on security and is in such demand that literally it's difficult to pin the guy down, so we're very nice that we could get this particular date and have Gary on the presentation to start us off. One of the things that I want to point out that he has been involved in and that Cigital, his company, has been spearheading is a broader initiative called the Build Security in Maturity model. And basically, it's not just a theoretical construct, it's not a consensus based standard. The group went off and decided that this would be a good idea, but this is based on the actual practices of a large number of other developers and testers, a lot of corporate sponsorship involved in this, and basically mapped across the total life cycle, we'll be able to talk about how security can be built in and what participation testing, among other aspects, has in it. One thing that I mentioned about this and all the other speakers is because we have a small conference and we have a sort of an intimate setting, Gary and the other keynoters will be available for some or all of the time that you're at the conference, so you can get some one-on-one, small group time with them, sit around on break, sit around at lunch, and have a chance to pick their brains. So hope you'll be able to take advantage of that particular resource that we have.
Yeah, and that is a really big advantage too, because you're not going to get lost in the crowd, and you're going to be able to access the speakers, as Taz said, and ask them your specific questions. Now, as promised, we wanted to, in addition to telling you what's in the conference, we wanted to kind of let you see what we're seeing in our work on cybersecurity and other areas as well. One of the things that, especially as I go into various organizations on this, I see the security, either the security team or the security test team, however yours is configured there, to be somewhat isolated from the rest of the IT organization. In fact, many times it becomes kind of like a police force, and it's really hard to know who's doing what, and information fails to get shared. But even more importantly, I've been to several conferences now and listened to the tracks on cybersecurity, and the thing that is missing, in fact, read tons of white papers, as perhaps you have, the thing that is consistently missing in all of these is the need to test the effectiveness of your protections, of your mechanisms. People put a lot of trust in firewalls and encryption and other means, which is great. We need those. But many times they're not tested to see if they're configured correctly, if they're actually finding any kind of intrusions, if they're actually doing their job right. And as I mentioned earlier with the dumpster diving example, nearly not enough focus on the human factors of security. One of the greatest areas of threat is the malicious insider. And it's so easy for someone to get information from the inside to compromise your data. And then, as we just mentioned with the built-in security maturity model, many times security is not designed or built into systems. Most often it's patched in, and we've all lived through that with various products that we use, and you get a new security patch every week or so, and it's a never-ending march. So it's really not a very cohesive view of cybersecurity, and in fact the U.S. government, NIST, Homeland Security, that's why we're excited to have a speaker from Homeland Security that Taz is going to tell us about. They all have initiatives on frameworks for cybersecurity. Now the challenge is to get corporate America and even other government entities on board with these other, with these cybersecurity frameworks.
Yeah, I might also mention, and this is a segue into our next slide, the other thing that I find lacking is a good data-based decision-making, and not having the data and not making the decisions based on the data. And so we're also delighted that another keynoter we have on the first day of the conference, Capers Jones, again, a name that you should recognize, someone who's been involved for decades with a wide consulting practice gathering data. Capers is now a fairly senior figure and aging to the point that he wasn't able to accept our invitation to come to the conference, but he's willing to video in and to have live interactive session with us from his base up in Boston area. So he is going to share some of the data that he has, that he's been seeing trending over the years, and try to match that up with some of the resources that seem to be proven. And so basically, as you're able to go to make a case to management, or you're trying to get your budget or your schedule or your investments that are necessary, to have that kind of data and to have evidence to back up the arguments that you want to make is just invaluable. So I think Randy loves to talk these next couple of slides real briefly to talk about some of the kinds of information that Capers has been sharing over the years.
Yeah, that's right, Taz. I mean, I've known Capers since the mid-'90s, and I've interviewed him for various articles, and have always been very impressed with just the repository of information that he has. And so as a consultant and trainer, I always get these questions about, how much does a particular defect cost, when and where, and those kind of things, or which kinds of tests are most effective. Well, Capers is the guy that he just got all of that stuff. I mean, now this is from a presentation, State of the Software quality picture in 2011. So this is not his most recent numbers. He'll have those in September. But just as an example, this is like a couple of slides that he presented in that one presentation. But the security defects and the work hours to correct one and the cost per hour on average, $750 just to repair the defect. Okay, that's not to do anything else to clean up or remediate or anything. And he also breaks it down by design, requirement, creep defects, requirement defects, and so forth. And you get a pretty good picture of the cost of just fixing these defects. And you'll notice here that he says these are averages, okay? He says maximums can be greater than 10 times greater than these. But the one that really got my attention was the slide on the defect damages and recovery costs. Like for the averages here, security defects over 200 or about $200 million there. They're the largest because they have penalties involved, and usually you have litigation involved as well. But you can see that some of these can get extremely large when they really go wild. One example of that was also the Facebook IPO that happened, and there was a performance problem in the stock trading system, and so a lot of the people who wanted to make trades at a given time couldn't. And the last number I heard on that was that payouts of over, I think, $83 million had occurred, and that was a 3-line coding error, I believe, that was due to that little section of code got into a loop. But by the time they reimbursed brokerage houses and individual investors and paid SEC fines and all of that, it was super expensive. But anyway, these are just kind of examples of some of the kinds of information that KPERS is going to be bringing to us in September.
Yeah, I'd also like to mention a couple of other keynoters, not necessarily people names to conjure with, but we're delighted through some of our personal contacts and recommendations to snag a couple of other people that I think will be very helpful. Maybe they'll become names in the future, but basically folks that can give us some practical insights. This is a speaker that we're going to have from the side of the financial world. We're going to look at ways in which, as we say, the business value proposition, I mean, those are just words to conjure with, but essentially we want to look at how we can begin to convince people, as I was saying earlier, with evidence-based reasoning, with data-based reasoning, how, in fact, you can provide the service that the investment in the testing should have. And then I think we also have from over on the medical side, Carl Cecil, who is also going to be talking about business value and bringing to bear his history and his insights. So once again, these are some folks that from a variety of settings, I think with some very practical insights that they're going to be able to share with us, and once again, be able to engage with you on one-on-one and small groups while you're at the conference.
Yeah, and I've known Carl for quite a few years also, and I've seen him work in a variety of contexts, and he's just an amazing team leader, and he knows how to bring out the best in people. So if you're a leader or manager or something, it'd be worth it just to spend some time talking with Carl on how he does that. But I thought, having someone from the large corporate perspective, very large scope of distributed teams around the country would be interesting for us to hear. Just a real quick word on the business value of testing, since we're giving you some tips and little things to take away here. The business value of testing, some of it can be measured, some of it is more subjective and harder to measure, but the measurable things are the defects that you're able to prevent and document that you prevented and how much they might have cost had they not been prevented. Also the idea that you can contain defects from going throughout a project, in other words, finding them early. There's also the lowered risk of project failures, which can save you millions and millions of dollars, which is a huge value. But some of the things that are non-defect, non-failure related would be things like having better stakeholder engagement and satisfaction, and also being able to retain customers and attract new customers. Those may not be immediately measurable, but at some point they do get expressed in either higher profits, better projects, or those kind of things. And then, of course, at the bottom here, things that just really hard to measure, like the loss of your reputation, loss of life, like in the case of safety-related losses. Getting this higher understanding of risk is extremely valuable. I don't know how you put an exact value tag on that, but ultimately getting a better understanding of your customer needs through what we know in testing, what we've learned. Because you'll find that testers probably have one of the broadest views of the things that are built and deployed than anyone else. And they also have, many times, the best bridges with the stakeholders of anyone else. So it's more than just finding problems that you build your value in testing. One of the, I guess, examples of this too, and Taz will probably want to to contribute his thoughts on this. But this was a fairly recent article from Target, from the New York Post, about how their profits were down $440 million after their data breach. Not every company experiences that dramatic degree of loss, but I think that is one glaring example out there that you don't want to be that, okay? And however it happened, you want to avoid that one.
Yeah, my other takeaway is if you're going to be a company, don't let your logo be a bullseye, because you really are a target. Anybody, you don't realize anybody has valuable resources. You have assets, and those assets are not only valuable to you, to your company, to your stakeholders, to your customers, but they're valuable to others that would like to misuse, or redirect those resources. So one of the things, again, that testers can be in a key position to understand is, what are your crown jewels? How are you protecting those crown jewels? How might they be appealing to others, and can we begin to put ourselves in the mind of someone who wants to take advantage in a malicious sort of way of those resources?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess let's get into some of the tutorials. Taz, if you want to speak to some of these.
Sure. The first day of the conference, sort of a classic arrangement, but once again, we're keeping this thing very focused. We have half-day tutorials, 3 in parallel in the morning and 3 in parallel in the afternoon. As we said, we're really taking advantage of some of the local resources that are there. So Joe Jarzenbeck, who has been very prominent in the Department of Homeland Security and a number of collaborations with other government agencies, including the Defense Department, is not only going to accept our invitation to present, but also has agreed to put a panel together. And so he's going to have some other government and business leaders sharing their insights on security challenges. Now, not everyone who comes to the conference is going to have that as their particular focus. So Randy here is going to have his always popular free and cheap test tools. I think we're going to have him talk much faster than usual, because that's normally like a full day, isn't it? And you have a lot of good material to cover, but you're going to hit the highlights on that. And we have another one of our prominent ASTQB contributors, Tom Adams, who is going to be talking about the software development life cycle. That's our choices you have in the morning, and then I think in the afternoon we have 3 other choices of individuals. Again, some fairly impressive information they want to share on process improvement, on the use of data. We have, we're talking about big data. I think we don't only have big data, we have big fast data. And so you've got data that's in near real time that you want to try to understand, and you want to use that to your advantage in terms of how you're going to be managing your projects. And of course, again, one of the methodologies that, as Randy pointed out, is less well understood in all aspects, but something we need to do a better job of measuring and understanding is in the more agile or iterative approaches. So those are the array of things that are available, and if you can't attend one of those tutorials, or there are a couple of them are in conflict with one another, you basically can get a hold of those speakers and their information. We're just going to focus on one other aspect of the conference. Each of the 2 days of the conference, in addition to the 4 keynoters, is going to have breakout sessions, and so there'll be a couple of parallel sessions going on. Randy is going to be making a presentation on the afternoon of the second day of the conference on the Tuesday, and then he and I are going to be unveiling some of the information that we have alluded to about the certification that's being developed at international level. The way in which the ISTQB works this is we basically have to get this to a beta release version, which we believe we're going to have, that we can begin to more publicly share that. As smart as we are, or as smart as the other people that have been working within the international community are about what we think is appropriate for the expectations of expert and more advanced levels of testing of certification, security testing, we really want to open that up to the broader community. So we'll give people at the conference a first opportunity to engage with us and with that content, and then want to bring you all along in terms of getting your insights so we can do a better job on that.
Right. And then don't forget this, Taz, the awful bug contest.
Well, that's always a highlight. I say always a highlight because we did it one time. But it was a great success story. We finished up the San Francisco conference last year. We encourage people to bring their war stories, their horror stories, and there's some very amusing ones, there's some frightening ones, always entertaining, and also told in an entertaining fashion. And so people that are not afraid, or maybe the names have changed to protect the innocent, but they bring that. We do supply the fly swatters, but folks will be able to bring that information. That's always a grand finale that we look forward to in terms of the conference. So I think that's our shameless self-promotion for the conference. Obviously, we've given you the information about the website, the idea to entice you to get an early bird savings and an additional code for a 10% discount further because you've plugged in with us on the webinar. But those are the kinds of things that we're excited about and would like to be one piece of what ASTQB is contributing to advance the state of the testing profession. I think we have a number of other things we'd like to talk about beyond that, and so in the minutes that we have remaining, we have some other tips and some tidbits to share with you. I think I will just indicate that we do really need to have a good risk analysis and prioritization, and that sometimes the weak link is certainly going to be the human factors, both in terms of whether it's an insider threat, people not following their policies and procedures. Is there any way that you can enhance or bulletproof the way in which you're doing things? But certainly, like any other aspect of quality, you can't paint this on, you can't test the security in anymore. You can test in the quality or the reliability or any other aspect of what you desire. So one of the key ideas is that you're going to have to be involved as much as possible across the whole life cycle. Sometimes test planning is a very valuable aspect without even having to do the testing.
That's right, and you know, back to the case in point of the guy doing the test in the airplane as it was in the air. That was kind of extreme, but there have actually been testers that have been arrested for suspicion of being malicious insiders. So you want to get authorization and permission before doing any security test. And one of the things that, you know, this protects you because it is possible to do harm with security tests, because some of the attacks are so malicious, and I've heard accounts where the entire network was destroyed because the test wasn't done properly. It wasn't done in an isolated environment. It wasn't performed using only trusted tools. People will find some hacker tool out there on the web. So you really have to be careful with this, know what you're doing. This is one of the reasons why the knowledge is so important here, and why we're trying to get this security tester certification built out and going. But bottom line is you really have to stay current with what's going on. I advise people to get on the email list of CERT. They will let you know of any new vulnerabilities as soon as they hear of them. Even then it may be too late for you, but the sooner the better. And then SANS, they have the top 20 control lists as well as the top 25 software error and vulnerabilities lists that are really great resources to help you in your test planning for security and to know what you need to be on the lookout for. Now, I'm sorry, Taz, were you going to say something?
No, I'm going to say you're free and cheap, and so we got 5 more minutes or so for you to give this compressed version. As I say, probably one of the most popular things at presentations is the way you alert people to these resources that are available. So take it away, please, Randy. Okay.
Well, yeah, I don't have much time here. I have 3 tools that I want to show to you, just make you aware of. I became interested in this probably around 2001 or so, because I realized not everyone could afford the full-blown tool sets that are out there. So I started keeping this little list, and it just grew and grew and grew. So I think what I'm going to do at the conference is just present every other slide. I think that way I can get it down to about half the time. Now, I'll prioritize, but a good one is Code Reviewer by SmartBear. It's free. If you're into code reviews at all and you need a good way to manage those reviews and just make the reviews easier and less pain-free, then I suggest going out to smartbear.com or codereviewer.org and getting a copy of that. There's also Source Monitor by Campwood Software. I get a lot of questions from people that say, hey, I would love to know how can I measure my source code, like lines of code, complexity, those kind of things. This product will let you do that. This is also totally free. You can scan C++, C, C Sharp, VB.NET, Java, Delphi, and so forth with that one. And then for those of you who are in love with Selenium, and I like Selenium a lot too, it's a Firefox add-on for browser-based testing, totally free. There's this tool called Selenium Expert. It's another add-on that will scan your Selenium test and give you suggested improvements and tips, and even apply the changes with a single click. So I thought that was also very cool and very valuable for free. So, well, I think we've just about told you everything we know, believe it or not.
Yeah, it's a good thing they didn't give us more time, because we'd have really started been humming and hawing. But obviously, beyond what we can tell you about, we could put you in the direction of some links. So I hope we've whetted your appetite in terms of what we're going to be having available at the conference. There's the website for the conference information, and take advantage of that. There's just a lot of other resources out there. You've got the open folks there. With one of the links there. Of course, again, your tax dollars at work, the CERT, the Homeland Security folks, and a lot of other resources. NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, have a lot of information out there. That one of the problems you have is there's almost too much information there. You need to focus. If you're working in a particular industry, you're working in particular technology, you're working with concern about mobile, or concerned about a particular application arena, that's where you need to focus, because you're just sort of drinking from the fire hose otherwise. But if you have some interest, you have some concerns about things we've touched upon, or as you're starting to explore further, obviously getting in touch with us. We'd be happy to handle email inquiries that you make. And I see Randy's also put a .org reference there for some free tools that I think you used to tap into, right?
Right. OpenSourceTesting.org is an amazing place. You'll find just, I want to say a gazillion tools, but not really. But
that's 10 to the gazillion. That's a lot.
Something to that magnitude.
That's a lot of them.
There's more than you'll ever need. Not all of them will work for you in your situation, but it's just amazing what you'll find out there. And as well as the OWASP website for security. Lots of good information, resources, templates, all kinds of stuff there. So I guess with that, I would like to say thank you for your attendance today. We hope to see you at the conference. If you do make it to the conference, come up and poke us in the side or something and say hi and let us know that you heard the webinar. We'd love to talk with you.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. This has been fun, and I hope the folks have appreciated maybe more than just one voice monotonously droning on. You have the variety of a couple of voices monotonously droning on. Yeah,
yeah, two drones going at the same time. Well, thank you very much for watching, and we hope that you can be a part of the conference and a part of the next webinar that we do. Thank you.